Hi and welcome to this week's Mailbox, and we're going to be going through your comments on topics which include the release date for the next expansion, the Kul Tiras armour set, what exactly is the Storm, Jaina's story, and being clear on what a sub-race is. So getting on to the first one, early summer release for next expansion. Trust me, I know stuff. No. In all seriousness, it's never summer. It's not just that there isn't time, because the beta, the alpha stroke beta, whatever you want to call it, the open part where they let people actually show everyone else what it's like and send in wave after wave after wave of players to actually test this stuff out, that tends to last about 9 months. Obviously it's not out yet, and it's not going to be before BlizzCon, and it's not going to be out immediately after BlizzCon because, you know, Antorus release, but before the end of the year, possibly. Obviously we'll find out at BlizzCon potentially. That alone means that it's got to be after summer, but just history tells it's going to be after summer. It's always after summer. It's always autumn, winter. Always, every single expansion, every single time has released at the back end of the year or at the very start of the year, like that autumn winter time. It's never some, because I know without even having to go through and check the dates, because it's always at the busiest time of the year for me as a teacher. That's when they always release it. They never release it, even though I'm technically off for a quarter of the year. You know, I mean, I'm not off putting my feet up, but I could move things around if they brought it out during one of the term breaks and actually, you know, be able to level up in a day like a lot of other people can do. I can't do that. So I sort of notice when they bring these things out, and it is always that first, for me, the first term between sort of September and Christmas or New Year, which is always the busiest. So next one, what do you think about not logging as a heroic guild? Do you support slackers or prohibit competition that way, or do you enable people to do mechanics? If you don't log, and I know a lot of heroic guilds won't log, and you know, but if you don't log, you've got no way of really telling if people are doing the mechanics. I mean, some are obvious, some you can just look around. But logs are the great way of seeing what people are actually doing, not what they say they're doing. You know, including, for example, one classic example is ad comes up and it has to be switched to immediately and by everyone. So we have, for example, thing on Mythic Fallen Avatar where, but this would apply equally to Heroic, when the Maiden Shield comes on, we've got to beast it down, because if you don't, you're going to wipe. And a certain amount of DPS is required to do that. Some people may feel that they have such a ramp-up time with their DPS when they switch target that it's not worth their while. Now, if your raid as a whole can easily make that DPS check, then that's fine. But if they struggle, even a little bit, sometimes you miss this DPS check by a very tiny amount, well, that person would have done that tiny amount. It may not be looking good on their meters. It may be a bit of a pain for them to do it, but it can be just enough to tip it over the edge. Now, if they say they're doing that anyway, because sometimes you can't just tell by looking at the damage they're doing on it, because, you know, like they've said, they have a big ramp-up time on their damage. How do you know that not much damage done to it without logs is the fact that they haven't switched to it, or that they have switched to it, they're just doing rubbish damage because they've just switched. So with logs, you could tell when they started hitting it with what abilities. You could even go into the replay if you want to be quite sure. As soon as that shield is active, look at everyone and see what they're targeting. You can actually in logs see what someone is targeting. So yeah, without logs you have no way of doing that. Now, of course, you can make the logs private. The downside there, if people are wanting to rank, that someone might do their own log and that goes up. Now, I seem to remember, now don't quote me on this, I'm sure that Kira at some point, who's the author of Warcraft logs, mentioned something about guilds, like the leaders in the guild, being able to sort of prevent that happening. So in other words, if you do a raid as part of a guild group, that any logs uploaded, because if you look in your logs, you'll see it, you know, there's an entry for the guild as well, so there's guild attached to that log. And if you see, you know, if the program sort of sees someone uploading on behalf of that guild, that it won't let it go public. But I'm not sure if that's enacted yet, or if that was something he was just musing on, or if it's something he is going to do and hasn't done yet, so I don't really know the details of that. But you're generally speaking, that's going to be the case. The other thing is, even when it's private, and some people do make their logs private for the reason of trying to stop people whoring, it doesn't always work because, I mean, what was around, people used to DPS whore before logs became a thing, back in vanilla and early TBC. And what do they, well, they had the damage meters. They'll just, you know, stroke their EP for their raid group. It's not as good for them as doing it for the whole world, but, you know, there it is. I mean, this is one of those areas for heroic guilds where I can only talk in general terms and hypothetical terms because, again, I don't have that experience, unfortunately. But I'm surprised. There's certain things that do surprise me. One thing that surprises me about people DPS or in heroic, if it is actually costing you, the kill, because those raiders are never going to get rank 1s. Because the top logs are occupied by mythic raiders going and just going ham. Like, for example, today, I mean, I did a heroic 2 months ago in a pug organised by someone I know, the author of the IC Veins Guide for the Retribution Paladin. And I'm going in on my main. You can bet your arse I'm going in there to ham it up. Now, I'm still going to do essential mechanics. But within that framework, I'm going to go mad. Because on Mythic, I behave myself. I'm really good at behaving myself. I don't care how long it's been on farm. I will always do the mechanics as well as I can. My DPS is always secondary. I don't even have my damage meter showing when I do Mythic. But in Heroic, different matter. So you're up against like someone like me with loads of gear and who's experienced kills on these Heroic fights so many times that I know the fight backwards. And I'm just there to burst through that boss as quickly as possible. So they're not going to get very high percentiles anyway. So it always seems a little bit odd for me personally anyway. That. But yeah, in terms of what you would do about logs, I would definitely log. You could consider making them private if you want. It may not stop those people. Ultimately, I think in a heroic, again, this is hypothetical because I can't speak from experience, but I think your best bet would be to identify the fact that it's flex. And if someone is actively wiping you, kick them out. Because, like, let's say the Maiden Shield, for example, on Avatar. If you're not quite making it, well, if you kick someone out, that shield doesn't need as much damage now. Well, if they're not doing any damage to it, they're dead weight. They're actually just buffing the shield. Out. Gone. On delay. Arriba. That's what I would do. Next one, Thete. So this is Thete of the Triumvirate, the new dungeon. It says, was more overtuned than Cathedral. I mean, Cathedral week 1, it was horrendously bad last week with teaming, blah, blah, blah. Well-deserved nerf. Now, yeah, I mean, this is the thing I was talking on Friday about the fact that all these nerfs have come to Thete of the Triumvirate, which took me by surprise. There's several people saying, oh, no, I can't understand why you've never seen the complaints about it. I haven't, though. It's really weird. It is weird. Obviously, there must have been a lot of them because these nerfs, and you know, Blizzard are not in the habit of just randomly nerfing stuff, especially by this much, if there's no issues with it. And I've not done it myself, I have to say, because I don't do that many Mythic Plus dungeons these days. And when I do, I just haven't happened to have a seat key. But, you know, I've known people who have done them at reasonably high keys without real issue. And I've not heard anyone complain about it. Like Cathedral, the complaints were everywhere. You couldn't actually avoid the complaints about it. You know, I saw complaints in my guild. I saw complaints on Discord. On various channels in Discord. I saw complaints on forums, on Twitter. You know, Blizzard tweeting back about these issues. Because that's a thing, a very strange thing. You know, I haven't seen Blizzard say anything about Thete being overtuned until they announced these nerfs, and even then there wasn't really anything to accompany it in by way of explanation. So I certainly do keep my eye on what Blizzard say, because there's the MMO Champion Blue Tracker, which is really useful for that, and of course I follow the various accounts on Twitter as well, so I often see when they tweet stuff. I often see that as well. No, I didn't see it at all. How strange. But yeah, as people have said, it must have needed it if it's got these nerfs on this level. Next question, it says, ever since this armour set, so this is the Kul Tiras armour set, so I've done the video on my thoughts about Jaina Proudmoore coming into the Legion story, not just waiting for the next expansion, and there's various bits of information about that. In fact, actually, when I put that video up, I was actually a little bit worried, because I was thinking to myself, I've not seen anyone sort of say this, I obviously don't watch everyone's videos. In fact, I don't get time to watch as many YouTube videos on WoW as I used to because I'm making them. It's really weird. But yeah, when I was putting it up, I was expecting a load of comments. Oh, so-and-so did this first, you're just copying them. And because I was thinking, oh, because I was so surprised that no one has sort of suggested this already. But, you know, it seems not. But yeah, so someone here is saying, ever since this armor set was leaked, I've been thinking this was the Legion version of the Fel set, part of the pre-expansion event, where you can basically gear up your character to catch up for the next expansion. Absolutely, this could be what it is indeed. We don't know it's player armor as far as I know. It could just be NPC armor. And it could well be, if it is player armor, that would make sense, that it's a pre-expansion event. The thing that got me thinking even earlier, because I'd already started thinking in those terms myself, the thing that made me think pre-expansion even, is the novel. This idea that the novel is all about the events immediately after Shadows of Argus. And of course it doesn't say that Jaina's in it, and it doesn't say that if Jaina is in the novel that she's going to appear straight away. But it's just one of those things that got me thinking, because we know full well that this author, Christy Golden, is someone who's regarded as going to be writing a Jaina story competently. We're fully expecting Jaina to be a key part of that novel. And if she's going to be a key part of that novel, then that means she's going to be a key part of the story and game as well. And that's why I'm thinking earlier with that. But of course, Jaina could come in earlier and the Kul Tiras armor might not make an appearance until later. Or it may be that the Kul Tiras armor makes an appearance on NPCs in 7.4, let's say, just speculation, and that it becomes available to become player armor in the pre-expansion patch, just as you say there. Presumably as like the cloth or leather version. It doesn't look like plate. Next one, but on to Jaina. So Jaina's story here. So Jaina is the original emo. She is a baddie I need to level now. I want to sprint to her and get realm first. I don't think she's going to be a baddie. The rage porting emo over emotional windbag. The thing is with Jaina is she's just a massive contradictions. Not because she's a complex character. I just think she's been written very badly. Whenever she hasn't had a major story. So the events, I mean, these are the things that I sort of counterpoint here. So Theramore got bombed by Garrosh. And we say Garrosh, not the Horde. No other Horde leader would have, maybe Sylvanas would have done, but she'd have launched the plague at them. But generally speaking, no other Orc war chief would have carried out such an action. And she would have known that. All right, still raw, people died that she loved, fine. Then you had because even then she sort of seemed to get over it a little bit. And then there was the issue in Dalaran in Mists of Pandaria with the bell being stolen. And again, that was very much Garrison's. She should have known that as well. So after that, she's become very anti-Horde, like massively anti-Horde. But you counterpoint that, because in theory, you might sort of say that sort of motivation makes sense. But when you go back to Warcraft 3, she allowed Thrall to kill her father for the sake of peace. So if she was so intent on peace between the Alliance and the Horde that she would allow her own father, whom she did not dislike, by the way, she wasn't at loggerheads as such. She disagreed with him on these things, but she didn't hate him or anything. To allow that to happen, for her to be of that sort of person, and then, you know, for all this stuff later to happen and all of a sudden she doesn't come round, always seemed a bit weird to me. So I think what I would be hoping is that in terms of Jaina's story, they start to get her back onto a much more sensible track. Obviously, the author's going to have some work to do if they want to do it well in trying to explain her stroppiness. But whatever her strop is, I think she's going to have to get over it. I don't think she's going to be a baddie. I don't think that would make sense, really, in any great way. Because apart from it, I mean, you can imagine her being a baddie for the Horde if they did separate Horde and Alliance content. But, you know, not as a common enemy. Because, yeah, she's not going to fight the Alliance. Next one, again, related to this idea of the storm. So, you know, the novel is called Before the Storm. It says, when I hear the word storm immediately, EOA dungeons, I have a shower of dungeons, quotes, especially Wrath of the Bashara ones, the storm awakens and boss abilities come in mind all the time. Yes, as they would. It's one of these things where when you're doing that fight and the storm can refer to, I mean, for a start, that Wrath of Bashara is in a storm. It is a storm itself, isn't it? And you wondered if the storm just referred to that. But maybe, as you sort of note here, with again this word storm coming in the novel, maybe it refers to an actual thing, an entity or an event, something like that. A bit like in Doctor Who when Matt Smith first took the mantle and you had the Silencer, which referred to a group of aliens in that particular case. So yeah, maybe it actually is something that refers to an entity or a group, an actual enemy, as opposed to just a load of water sloshing around. So that is certainly possible, the storm itself. And it would make sense, again, I mean, a lot of these storylines, we have to bear in mind, they're not writing them as they go along. They're planning them a long way out. Now, I don't think they always dot all the I's and cross all the T's when they're doing it, but we do know that they write these storylines out years in advance. They have said before that they know what's going to be happening in the next X number of expansions. The story arc is mapped out. So to have references in one expansion to something that's not happening for another expansion or two should come as no surprise at all. Next one, this is to do with microtransactions, cosmetic microtransactions specifically. It says, I do have a huge problem with microtransactions, even if they are cosmetic only. My issue comes down to that developers should have content built around these cosmetics or have them as an achievable goal. The thing is, it's a business, and the people in charge of that business are not the designers. We think of Ian Hazacostas as being very senior because he's the game director of World of Warcraft, so he must have a fair amount of autonomy, yes? No. When it comes to money, when it comes to making money from the game, none at all. He'll do what he's told to do. And that it's as simple as that. And they, the people who actually get to make the decisions with nobody going above their heads are the people who just want to make money. And that is what they will do. And it's the obvious thing to do. And I would far rather they increase the amount of cosmetic rewards on the online store. I also think they should increase the amount of cosmetic rewards in game as well, but that's a separate reason, which I'll come on to in a moment. But on the online store, simply because that is a lot better than trying to get money out of us in some other way. There are far more nefarious ways that they can have us get bringing money in. I mean, loot crates, long may they stay away from anything to do with this game. But if it's actual cosmetic rewards, it baffles me as well why there is such a piss poor selection. Because even just mounts and pets, they could easily be designing far more. You look at the number of mounts and pets we get in game for just doing a little achievement. I mean, what's that about? They could be designing them and then selling them. You'd easily pay for you could add another designer to your staff just to do it. Or a small design team. You'd easily cover their salaries. So yeah, it confuses me that they haven't done as much. But they haven't. So, but yeah, in terms of why I'd also do it in game, it's simply because a lot of the problems we've had in Legion is because Blizzard want us to, they're putting all this content and they want us to do it. And they don't just want us to pick and choose what we want to do. They want us to do all of it, pretty much. So they've compelled us to do it. And the way they've compelled us to do it is by putting in rewards that boost the power of our character. Which I don't think they should do. Because there's sort of two groups of players we could lump this into. And everyone has their different idea about what is a casual player and what is not. So for this, I'll define it. So if I say a casual player is someone who does not do a regular commitment of time with a group in order to do either PvE or PvP. So they're the people who might, well, if there's nothing to do that particular month, not subscribe for that month. So that's what I mean by casual in this particular instance. Those sort of players would still potentially do a lot of that content and sub each month for cosmetic rewards. Okay. The other players, the ones who are signing up and stuff like that, may not as much, although a lot of raiders and PvPers like their cosmetic stuff too. But they're going to subscribe anyway. They are subscribing anyway. So putting in like things like artifact power and the legendary system and all these sort of things they've put in place to try and keep us subscribed, they're not for the people who do the progress raiding or the PvP or anything like that, because they subscribe month after month anyway. I subscribed every month through Wolves of Draenor, and so did everyone in my guild that raided with me, because that's what we were going to do. So we didn't need, it wasn't for us, it was for casual players. So why not put in more cosmetic stuff? That's my view anyway. Yeah, this one, next one. It says, the next expansion will not go to beta soon after BlizzCon for the pure and simple reason that I don't have Antorus. What, you personally don't have Antorus? Okay. And I'm more than sure it will come with 7.3.5, yeah. Which isn't even on PTR yet. It sort of is. The PTR says 7.3.2. It doesn't, you know, there's not believed to be any new content coming with 7.3.5 other than the raid. And potentially some balance changes to make us want their new tier set, like they've already started doing with Windwalkers, buffing their abilities by 15%, nerfing their tier 20 set, so that those players look at their tier 20 and go, oh, shiny. But yeah, this thinking, you know, oh, they're not going to bring it out for testing because Antorus is still going to be a thing, doesn't work. Because you're thinking about the recently past expansions. Recently past expansions have had the final raid of the tier finished a good year or more before the next expansion. Not happening this time. They're going to keep bringing out content. Not right up until then, that would be silly. But they are going to keep bringing out content. They're not going to allow any period of time without content that could be considered a dry patch, like a content drought. They're not going to do that. So in actual fact, what you should really be doing is looking at the behaviour from the first couple of expansions. You know, when people were still progressing right up to the end. Betas were still out then. You know, the alpha and beta, I'll call it alpha stroke beta because it doesn't seem to have very definite meanings. They need a good 9 months. That's what seems to be given for them. 9 months. That's how you end up with an expansion that comes out that sort of works, even if they ignore gameplay aspects that they shouldn't have done. But it will be largely bug free and it will work and it will do what they want it to do. You're not going to have 9 months of nothing to do in Legion. They're not going to allow it. So no, it's got nothing to do with that. Now, it won't be immediately after BlizzCon, but it wasn't immediately after BlizzCon last time. But it was by the end of the year. And I still think it will, because if it's not, so let's say they don't bring it out, the beta out until January, which is possible, then that means it's probably going to be September, October release, which again is possible. But the longer it is that they leave it, the more content they have to produce for Legion, because again, they cannot afford to be accused of another content drought, even if it's not as big as past expansions. If there's anything that people can say, content's dried up then, so it would instantly be a failure, never mind what's come before it. And as I say, in the first couple of expansions, yeah, people were progressing right up to the end. They were still testing. Next one, to do with transmog. So, before transmog came out, Blizz said that they couldn't do dyes because of armour coding. They would either have to change the code for every currently existing item, add a weird hue to the items that apparently looked awful, or only have it applicable to new gear, none of which they deemed good enough to put into the game. That last one was a bit short-sighted if true, because obviously you can absolutely get away with only making it applicable to new gear. There's nothing wrong with that. No one's going to have a gripe with that. I mean, they've had ample opportunity to do this now. They changed the codes in lots of things in the game whenever they've had massive revamps for the 1 to 60 content. They've had massive revamps on stats. They've done a stat squish before. Whether they'll do it again or not, I don't know. Is this really different? I mean, I can't say it is or it isn't, because obviously I know nothing about the coding side or indeed any side of game development. But it seems a strange one to me. I still think the reason why they didn't want to do it is because they use recolors of armor as content. And I think it's as simple as that. If they didn't, then I'd be more inclined to believe their reasons, even though it seemed strange to me. But the fact of the matter is that they take advantage of the fact that we can't dye our own armour to do their recolours. But you can take that whichever way you want. Last couple then. So, first one. This was to do with the video I did on sub-races, which I did basically when the news broke there, or the day after. It says, too late for suggestions. Everything is prepared. They just need to launch it. Now, there's two things I want to sort of point out on this one. First of all, it's quite odd because I wasn't putting any suggestions in that video. It was a news video. There were no suggestions at all. So I don't know whether they meant to reply to someone else in the thread and they just didn't. But the other thing is, everything is prepared. They just need to launch it. That's in fact very far from the truth. One of the reasons I started to do this channel, there were a few. One of them was to try and get information, which I've so far failed to do, unfortunately. But so to get information out there. So when something is breaking news about a development that's happening, to get people discussing it. Because actually, once it's launched, that's the point at which it is generally too late. What you want to do, if you want to influence any development in an expansion, you need to do it as early as possible. So that's why as soon as I got into the alpha and beta last time, I was talking about all the things that I thought were important, all the good things and all the bad things about it, to try and, you know, generate some discussion there. Because when it's in its early stages, that's when Blizzard will listen. They become more obstinate as it gets further down the line, because inevitably what happens when you're getting close to the release date, they've got 1,000,001 things still to do. They don't sit back and relax at any time. So things that they'll then start to prioritize, and they'll start to think, do we absolutely need to change this? Is it a bug? No, it's not a bug, so we'll leave it. So if it's a philosophy design decision that is going to upset the community at large, then they'll just, you know, the time to do that is before they're committed to it. As soon as possible. Preferably before you even know they've done it. Which is why it is actually quite a good idea to do, and that's why I quite liked, well, it's fun anyway to do speculation videos, but when you try and do speculation videos based on what seems likely at the time, obviously you can do 10 speculation videos that all seem likely, and you're doing well if half of them are true. But at that stage, because at that point they haven't even gone public about it, they're totally uncommitted to it. They're not losing face at all. And then later on, yeah, if it's got to a very late stage, then it's too late. So you need to do it earlier. So that's why I advise people, even before, and I'll be doing this myself. Let's say I don't get into the alpha this time, and I easily may not, then I will still be keeping an eye on what other people are reporting and commenting on it myself. And I encourage other people to do it as well, because don't just wait until you can try it out for yourself. Look at what other people are doing. If you're interested, if you don't want spoilers, obviously don't watch that stuff. But keep away from what's going to be probably a quarter of the content of this channel by that point. But you need to discuss it earlier, get Blizzard thinking about it, post properly, so that they can't just think it's one or two people moaning about something. Or if something that's really good, by the way, and they're thinking of changing it. It's like, no, keep it, it's perfect as it is. There's that side of it too. It's not always about just moaning about the bad things. It's also making sure the good things stay in. Because, I mean, one thing, for example, there was a spell that was given to Retribution Paladins. As soon as I got into Alpha, which was quite early on last time, anyway, by sheer dumb luck, and there was a spell we had. It was actually called Lothar's Might to begin with, and then someone pointed out that Lothar's a warrior, so then they changed it to Tyrallian's Might. Now, I'm not saying it was a great spell, but it was a spell that we didn't have before. It was a new spell for this thing. But a couple of weeks later, it was gone again. They decided it was gone. So to suggest that as soon as they've done something, that's it, it's finished. No. They prepare things for new expansions and then toss them in the bin all the time. And then sometimes get them back out of the bin and put them back in. They did that, for example, with relics. The Netherlight Crucible. Originally, we were going to have an extra random trait on our relics as part of patch 7.2. But then they didn't like the way it was working, so they got rid of it from 7.2. That's why our last order hall research thing is now just chance of double AP. And they put it into 7.3 instead in terms of this Netherlight Crucible, which I can only assume wasn't actually going to be a thing to begin with, because the whole system of the Netherlight Crucible was, you know, they expanded on that. And the last point, this is again to do with the video on the sub-races. So I was talking about the Void Elves being a sub-race choice for Night Elves, and going, no. And there was a lot of comments like this, completely misunderstanding what a sub-race is. So I'll just clarify that. It says, Night Elves would definitely not join the Void. I think what you meant was High Elves. No, I didn't. There isn't a High Elf choice. Now, yes, game lore-wise, you've got these different factions. But as someone else already said, everything's a Night Elf originally. But you've got Night Elves and High Elves and Blood Elves and Highborn, blah, 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 blah. As I say, blah, 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 there's not actually much else. But we're talking, sub-races are all about choices for the ones we have, the races we have. So, Alliance have Night Elves, that's their elf choice. Horde have Blood Elves, that's their choice. So the Void Elf would be a sub-race choice for either Blood Elf or Night Elf. The fact that they may be High Elves, game lore-wise, is irrelevant. What a sub-race is a choice for the races we already have. Sub-race. You know, it's like you choose your race. You choose either Night Elf or Blood Elf, depending on which faction you are. And then it's another choice within that you can elect to have or not. So that's what that's all about. Also, we don't know anything. It says Night Elves would definitely not join the Void. Well, a few years ago, we'd have said Night Elves would definitely not be mages because, you know, the Night Elves shunned the mages. That's why they had this barney. That's why High Elves and Night Elves sort of separated out societies. Because the High Elves were the ones who couldn't sate themselves of their addiction to arcane energy, but the Night Elves knew that this was what's attracting demons to Azeroth. And then in Cataclysm, we have Night Elf mages now. Was it Cataclysm they brought in? They brought in a lot of stupid choices, including Gnome Priest. I'm pretty sure it was that one. But certainly at some point later, then we have Night Elf mages, which lore-wise, a few years before, would have been unthinkable. All of us unthinkable. So to say you can't have Void Night Elves also doesn't make a great deal of sense anyway, but that's for other reasons. Well, I might as well go through it really quickly. In that, we have this idea that, okay, the Void is opposed to the light, and, well, Night Elves, you know, are all about the light. So is every race on Azeroth. Every race on Azeroth is, when choosing sides, sort of on the side of the light. Particularly the ones that are like native to Azeroth. They're all of the light. They all regard the light as this good thing. But the story is changing now. And also, as I say, ironically, most of the, if not all, of the major races native to Azeroth are actually creatures of the Void anyway, really, because it was the old gods that corrupted us. So anyway, there we go. That's the mailbox for this week. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Do this every week, every Sunday, so check it out then. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe especially, and share with other people. And until next time, I'll see you later.